Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Cozy Corner. We are still in our sweet Oblivion series. So, as you all know, I've already talked about how we met. Now I'm going to get into how things transpired in college. So, after the day with the hair incident, I decided that I wanted to go out for a class president. And I started my campaign, and my mom was helping me come up with ideas and things. I practiced a speech and everything. And it seemed like the more and more I tried to make myself known on campus, the more insecure he became. And he started to show through little things, trying to demand more my attention more and trying to get me to pretty much walk away from certain opportunities. Like, oh no, I don't think you should do that. You should focus on this or focus on that. Like, he would always try to derail a lot of the plans that I wanted to pretty much do. And so I was like, no, I'm going to go out for it. That's something that I want to do. I'm going to do it. Also, I decided to join the band. And so I decided to join Color Guard. And I did that also. And I think that was kind of like the turning point for him, because I was doing performances and I was being more social. I've always been a social butterfly. He's always been more so introverted. And he used to always say, well, I don't know people and I don't hang out with people like that. And you're always leaving me by myself and all these different things. And I'm like, but you have an opportunity to make friends, because I don't know half of these people either. The only person that I really knew, well, it was two people that I only knew, was the two young ladies. One that I went to, two of them that I went to high school with, they ended up going to the same school. And so he was just like, yeah, well, I'm by myself. I don't this and that. It was kind of like a manipulation thing, like trying to isolate me even in that situation. But I wasn't allowing him to do it. And the more and more I resist, the worse it became, as far as like him trying to make his presence known. So I remember one day we were out and I was doing my practice for my tryouts. And he would kind of like stay around in the area of where I was for practices. And it kind of got to the point where he was always assuming that I was out doing something with who knows what, with who, and all those different things, even though he knew my whereabouts. He knew I had late practices and we practiced outside. It's not like we was on the inside. We was literally outside for everyone to walk down to the track and see us practice. So, but it was just a way for him to feel some type of way. And so I told him, I was like, well, why don't you get involved? Like, there's so many different clubs and organizations that you can join to get involved. And he used to always have an excuse for that. Also, I think because I had made myself too available to help him with schoolwork, that was another thing, because it was like, well, I have this paper due at this time and I have this. And then I knew he wasn't the best at writing papers. Like, he didn't really, in so many ways, if it wasn't for me, he wouldn't have graduated, because I did a lot of his college coursework, which is the reason why he passed. And so things were okay. Freshman year, it wasn't too much. Of course, we had a lot of arguments freshman year, but it was my sophomore year where things started to kick up. And I remember I was still in Color Guard at this time. And I remember him, we got into an argument because in one subject, I believe I was taking physics at this time. And physics was not my best subject. I was taking physics and I needed a tutor. So I asked one of the guys that was really, really good in physics to tutor me. And we had decided to meet at the library for tutoring. And he literally flipped. He saw the number that the guy had gave me, and he assumed that I was hooking up with the guy, even though I told him that I was tutoring. I even invited him to come to the tutoring session with me. And he grabbed my wrist. I'll never forget this. He grabbed my wrist and he twisted my wrist. And at that time, I'm still actively practicing. We had a performance coming up. So I couldn't perform because I had a twisted wrist. And I'll never forget when he did it, I went to my room and I wrapped my wrist up and I took a picture and posted it on Instagram. At that time, Instagram was so popular. And I'll never forget his mom reaching out to me saying, hey, you may want to take that down. People are going to assume that something is going on. But little did she know that something did go down. So, of course, I had a bruised wrist and I could not perform. And I remember the captain at that time, me and her had grew really, really close. And she was just like, I don't understand how you tolerate these things. Like, this guy is clearly abusive and he is very insecure and very narcissistic. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm in a relationship. He has a lot going on. Like, I was making excuses for his behavior and it was just one of those things. And that passed, right? So I remember when the movie, I can't remember the name of the movie. It was a Tyler Perry movie where the woman is married to this man and then she cheats with this other man and he ended up being abusive. But so we watching the movie, like we're all in this little area that we huddled together and we watched the movie. And he says, well, if it was like, he kind of made these insinuations, like, if you ever do me like this, you're going to wish you hadn't type of thing. And I'm like, okay, like, I didn't think nothing. I'm like, okay, we're watching a movie. Maybe he just talking outside of his neck, you know, I'm not really thinking nothing of it. And so I kind of brush it off. And so after the movie went out, we went outside and we were just sitting down talking. And I remember there was this other couple, and I'm not going to say their names for the purpose of safety and security, but there was this other couple. They got into a physical altercation outside of the dorm, and he was on top of her, beating her. And it was so sad because everyone just kind of stood around and looked at her getting beat up until an adult actually came and broke it up. And I remember her because we were actually friends, and I went to her room and her eye was swollen and yeah, she was kind of beat up pretty bad. And she kind of made excuses as to like, you know, we're going through a really tough time and, you know, he does his things when he's upset, you know, and, you know, everything's going to be fine. Now, in my head, I'm thinking to myself, oh, I'll never go through this. I would never allow myself to a man to do those things to me. But the whole time I'm literally in the same situation. He just hasn't done that, you know, but there's still abuse there. And so we leave and I go tell him, because it's crazy because even Rebel was even saying like, oh, that's wild that he put his hands on her, all types of things as if he wasn't doing the same thing, but in a different way, right? So that happened. Then we get a phone call, and I'll never forget this. I dated someone briefly before I dated Rebel. And this guy was also abusive, as you can imagine. And he called me. Now, keep in mind, the guy did not finish high school. He did not go to college. But for some reason, he was able to find out what college I went to. So I received a phone call from an anonymous number, a number I was not familiar with. And the guy on the phone says, I know where you are. I know what dorm you stay in. And he literally says the name of my dorm, the name of my school. And I instantly get frightened. I'm like, okay, what is going on? Because if he has followed me here or he knows someone at this school that is watching me, I need to be on high alert to let someone know what's going on. So I'm freaking out. I get off the phone with him because the weird thing is I received the phone call in the middle of the night and I'm like standing outside of my dorm. And I call Rebel and I'm like, hey, I just received a phone call from this number I'm not familiar with and all this other stuff. And he like, that's weird because I received a phone call as well. And I'm like, how does this person have both of our numbers? Like, that's just so weird. So I'm trying to like go down a list of people who could have given my number out and how did all this even come about? And so he's like, okay, we're not going to worry about it right now. We're going to just like see if anybody kind of acts suspicious or kind of like in any way say something to you that may be a hint that they could be that person. So I didn't think nothing of it, but I was still fearful. I was very fearful of my life, y'all, because the guy before Rebel was physically violent. And I mean, brutally violent. So I was terrified that he could have known where I was. And I'm like, do I really have a stalker on my hands? And if so, I have to tell someone. So for the next few nights, I literally could not sleep because I had that fear that I literally treated everyone as an enemy because I did not know who it was. Or even if this person was even real, but I knew it because I knew the voice, and he said his name, and he always had a nickname he went by, and not many people knew his nickname, but me and several other people that was close to him. And he used to always have this saying, and I'm not going to say it. But when he said it, I'm like, oh, okay, something is not right. And that was the most terrifying thing for me, is not only am I in an abusive relationship with someone, but my past is coming back to haunt me also.